In my last video, I showed you how to make a miniature dollhouse, and that gave me an idea. Why not make a paper miniature gingerbread house? I've been meaning to make one for so long, but for whatever reason, it never occurred to me to make it with paper instead of polymer clay. Crazy, right? This little gingerbread house is incredibly easy to make, and you can even turn it into an ornament for your Christmas tree. Make sure you watch until the end to get the free printable template to make this tiny gingerbread house yourself, or pay a visit to my shop for the digital version for cutting with a Cricut or a Silhouette cutting machine. But now, let's start, shall we? To build this miniature gingerbread house, as usual, I suggest using cardstock from old packaging, since I'm positive you all have lots of it at home already, and also it is a bit sturdier and thicker than regular cardstock. Let's begin to build our little gingerbread house from the top by making the roof. Cut this part 4 times and stick the layers in pairs, like this. Then cut all these little tiles and glue them to the roof's base, starting from the bottom. When the first row is complete, glue a second row above it, making sure that the lower end of the tiles slightly overlaps the top of the first row. Glue a third row of tiles to completely cover the panel. Repeat this process for both of the roof's sides, then set them aside for a moment. To make the chimney, cut this part 4 times and glue the layers 2 at a time. Repeat the same step for this part. Set the chimney's elements aside for a second. To make the walls of the gingerbread house, cut this part and this one twice, and this part 4 times. I've included a simplified design in the printable template to make it easier to cut by hand. The wall layers will also have to be glued together, but right now we're gonna leave them separate, and you'll see why later. Now let's make some little decorations for our gingerbread house. Cut this little snowflake into cardstock. If you happen to have a small snowflake paper punch like this one, or any other with a cute tiny design, you can use that. Now cut this part twice and glue the 2 layers together. Once again, you can just use a paper punch, especially if you're using my free printable template, which you'll find linked at the end of this video. And of course, if you own a Cricut or a Silhouette cutting machine, you can get the digital version in my shop linked in the description box. Repeat the same step for this part. And this part as well. You should end up with this. It's time to add some color to our miniature gingerbread house. At this point, you should have all these pieces. Cover them with a couple of coats of acrylic gesso, and I suggest you apply it with a sponge to achieve this cookie-like texture. Then paint all the elements with a light golden brown acrylic. You'll have to color both sides of the roof, chimney, gingerbread man, and Christmas tree elements, but just the front side for the remaining pieces. Now, I wanted to give my miniature gingerbread house sugar glass windows, and I used kitchen wrap to make them. Simply sandwich a cling wrap layer between the inner and outer sides of each wall. You can use a sticker maker or double-sided tape to attach these layers together. Then cut away the excess plastic. If you want, you can color the cling wrap with alcohol markers to make stained glass windows. And now's the perfect moment to begin decorating our little gingerbread house. If you want, you can simply use a white pen to mimic the sugar pipings, but I personally wanted them to have a 3D look, so I decided to use 3D paints instead. 3D paint can be found in most craft stores and even many dollar stores. But I wanted to find a DIY option, so I did some research, and sure enough, there are so many recipes to make your own 3D paint at home, and my favorite was this variant because it's oh so simple. You just need to mix 1 part talcum powder, 1 part white glue, and 1 part acrylic paint. Keep mixing until everything is perfectly combined. Then transfer the resulting mixture into a little plastic bag like this one. Seal the bag shut with clear tape. Then, cut out one of the bag's corners. Try to cut as close as possible to the tip of the corner. Now you can have fun decorating your miniature gingerbread house, and it's absolutely okay if the piping doesn't look perfect. In fact, the messier it is, the more realistic it will look. Or at least that's what I've been telling myself, since my mini piping skills are abysmal. Plus, the cool thing about this DIY 3D paint is that if you make a mistake or you change your mind, it comes off very easily. You can just scratch it off and try again. Also, you might want to consider using a needle tip bottle or a syringe instead of a plastic bag. I tried all of them, and my favorite was the syringe. Now that all of our gingerbread house's elements are ready, we can begin to assemble it. Start by attaching the front wall of the house to one of its sides. Then glue the back wall and lastly the opposite side. Place the roof panels. Then arrange the 4 sides of the chimney. Glue the little snowflake cookie right above the entrance on the front wall and the gingerbread man to the side. Finally, let's assemble the Christmas tree elements like this. And our miniature gingerbread house is ready. If you want, you can pierce a small hole into the chimney and use a twine to turn it into a cute DIY Christmas tree ornament. As promised, here's the link to the free printable template. And if you're interested in the SVG and Silhouette Studio files, there's a link to my shop in the description box. I suggest you watch this video next to find out how to make a proper dollhouse for your dollhouse using just paper. And this is all for today's video. Until next time, bye!